The twin girls mysteriously vanished while in their father's custody, and soon their grandmother discovered a shocking secret that would unravel the truth behind their disappearance. Beth arrived at her former home, parking her car outside the colonial-style house she had left exactly 10 days before. Once pristine and welcoming, the house now showed the scars of neglect. The white paint around the window frames was peeling away, and the once immaculate garden was now overrun with weeds that had pushed through the flower beds. As she sat in her car, brushing stray locks of her shoulder-length brown hair from her face, Beth allowed herself a brief moment to collect her thoughts before stepping into a day already heavy with dread. Earlier that morning, Beth had spent several painstaking hours putting up missing person flyers all around town. Each flyer, adorned with the smiling faces of her daughter Emma and her twin Lily, both only 4 years old, felt as if it drove a knife deeper into her heart. For days had passed since they were taken, for harrowing days of anguish and uncertainty that no mother could have imagined in her worst nightmares. With a deep breath to gather her strength, she left her car and walked up the cracked concrete path toward the front door. The door, unlocked with the same key she had used for years, spoke volumes of how little had changed in Peter's priorities since she moved out. Inside, the familiar musty smell of the house mingled with the sour notes of whiskey, stirring an immediate churn in her stomach. The hardwood floors, once polished religiously, had grown dull and scuffed over time. Beth's soft hello echoed through the foyer as she entered the living room, where she found Detective Morris waiting with his notepad already open on his knee. Her estranged husband, Peter, sat on the couch in a disheveled state, his once neat reddish-blonde hair now uncombed and marred by a 3-day stubble that darkened his jaw. In an armchair nearby, Peter's frail mother, Claire, a woman in her 70s with thin, white hair, sat rigidly while clutching a handkerchief so tightly that her knuckles had turned white with tension. Detective Morris, a tall man with salt and pepper hair and kind, empathetic eyes that had witnessed too much sorrow, greeted Beth with a calm, "Thank you for coming." Beth, determined to focus on finding her missing daughters, avoided Peter's accusing gaze. She settled on an ottoman near the dusty fireplace and a mantel that bore family photographs arranged haphazardly. Some images had even been knocked over and hastily replaced. Morris explained that sometimes it was only by going over the statements again that missing details would resurface, even those forgotten in the first recounting. Peter shifted on the couch, the leather creaking beneath him, insisting he had already told everything. His voice, heavy with the odor of alcohol, lent little reassurance as he recounted that afternoon when the girls wanted to play hide-and-seek in the backyard. He had counted to 20 while they hid, only to find that when he went looking for them, they were simply gone. He described searching everywhere, behind the shed, among the bushes, under the deck, and calling their names until his throat grew raw. Meanwhile, Beth noticed that every time a floorboard creaked, Claire would jump, her eyes darting anxiously as she twisted her handkerchief and dabbed at her eyes that were not quite tearful. When Detective Morris asked about the backyard gate, previously thought to be closed, Peter admitted with a shrug that it had been left unlocked. "I must have forgotten to lock it after taking out the trash," he explained. Beth silently rolled her eyes at this typical Peter behavior, carelessness about the most important details ever since he lost his job, and had grown increasingly negligent about basic safety measures, despite her constant reminders about child-proofing and security for their toddlers. The conversation soon turned personal as Detective Morris questioned Beth about where she had been when the girls disappeared. With quiet firmness, Beth explained that she had moved out 10 days ago and was now staying at the Pinewood Lakeside campground. When asked why she had left, her voice, though laced with restrained emotion, revealed that their marriage had been difficult for some time. Peter had lost his executive position at the bank 2 years prior, and after that, everything changed. She described how she had been forced to watch Peter descend into alcoholism. What had started as a few beers after dinner escalated to a nightly bottle of wine and eventually endless whiskey. Despite her persistent encouragement for him to seek help, he stubbornly insisted he could handle it. Her departure was motivated by her deep fear that the girls would one day grow up believing that this dysfunctional, destructive pattern was the norm. Her thoughts then turned to the family photo on the side table, a picture of 4 smiling souls captured just 6 months ago. In that image were the identical 4-year-old twins with matching brown bob haircuts and pink outfits, sitting on their parents' laps. It was a stark reminder of happier times, now tainted by the current nightmare. As she scanned the room, Beth noticed small signs of disrepair everywhere. The peeling wallpaper in the corners and water stains on the ceiling spoke of a beautiful home marred by the ravages of Peter's drinking, which had consumed not only their finances, but their very marriage. Detective Morris, with his steady tone and watchful eyes, next asked where Beth had been at the moment of the girl's disappearance. Without hesitation, she recounted that she had been at work. She was a nurse at Mercy General Hospital, on shift from 7 o'clock in the morning until 7 o'clock at night, a fact confirmed by numerous witnesses. At this point, Peter interjected, his tone accusatory, reminding her that some witnesses claimed he had made a scoffing sound at her response. Beth felt her cheeks flush with anger as the detective made a note about checking all possibilities under standard procedure. Suddenly, Claire stood up, her movements jerky as if overwhelmed by sudden fear, and excused herself to fetch some water. As the elderly woman left the room, Beth couldn't help but notice how her hands trembled. Something about Claire's behavior seemed off, yet with the detective still present and consumed with worry for her daughters, Beth couldn't pinpoint exactly what was wrong. After Detective Morris stepped outside to take a call, leaving her alone with Peter, the returned Claire holding a glass of water she was not drinking, the tension in the room became nearly palpable. The only sound was the persistent ticking of a grandfather clock, a wedding gift from Beth's parents that now needed winding. Seizing this quiet moment, Beth asked Claire about Peter's behavior since the girls disappeared. In a low, genuine tone, she inquired if Peter had been sleeping or eating properly. Claire's eyes shifted to the doorway, where Peter had gone to refill his drink. "He's managing," she replied, twisting her handkerchief into knots, overwhelmed with grief. When pressed further about any clues to what might have happened to the girls, Claire became evasive, her gaze not quite meeting Beth's as she murmured, "No, nothing. He's as confused as the rest of us." Abruptly, Claire stood and said she needed to check on Peter. Throughout that long afternoon, as Beth observed Peter drinking heavily, first what looked like water but clearly was vodka, then openly pouring whiskey, the man's behavior grew increasingly paranoid. Even when anyone touched his study or his bookshelf, he snapped orders, "Don't move those books." When Detective Morris picked up a volume on child psychology, Peter insisted, "I have a system," replacing the book exactly as he'd found it. "Mr. Harmon, we need to search the house thoroughly," Morris said, referring to the standard procedure for missing persons cases. Peter retorted defensively, "You've already searched it twice. You won't find anything because I didn't do anything to my daughters." Later, while helping gather recent photos of the twins for the investigation, Beth went upstairs to the shared bathroom of the girls. As she opened the medicine cabinet in search of the small disposable camera she sometimes kept there, she noticed something odd. The twins' toothbrushes were missing from their colorful, butterfly-shaped holders. Frowning, she searched through drawers and cabinets, but found nothing. Children's toothbrushes were not items that would typically interest a kidnapper or thief. With growing concern, she then moved to the twins' bedroom, a room that was exactly as she remembered it, complete with 2 small beds fitted with matching pink comforters, carefully arranged stuffed animals on each pillow, and a bookshelf filled with picture books. However, when she opened the top drawer of their dresser, where she normally kept their hairbrushes and hair ties, she discovered those items were also gone. Confronting Peter about the missing items, she found him in the kitchen, pouring another drink with bloodshot eyes and unsteady movements. "The girls' toothbrushes and hairbrushes are gone," she stated, carefully studying his reaction. Peter simply shrugged dismissively and said, "I probably misplaced them while cleaning," taking a long sip of whiskey. His explanation struck Beth as implausible given his usual disorganization. The house was in clear disarray with dust on surfaces, dishes piled in the sink, and laundry overflowing from a hamper. When she asked, "Peter, when was the last time you cleaned anything?" his face darkened. "What's that supposed to mean? You think because you left I can't take care of our home and our children?" he retorted. "That's not what I said," Beth replied, trying to keep her voice level. "I'm just concerned about the missing items. They might be needed for DNA samples." Peter snapped, slamming his glass down so hard that amber liquid sloshed over the rim. "Maybe if you hadn't abandoned us, things wouldn't be such a mess." Beth stepped back as Peter's temper flared. This had been his behavior in the months leading up to her departure, where even the most innocent questions would be twisted into attacks. Soon after, Detective Morris returned to the kitchen. "Mr. Harmon, we need to take another look at your backyard. The K-9 unit is here," he said. As Peter followed the detective outside, Claire appeared in the doorway, looking even more anxious than before. She hesitated at the threshold, her thin fingers still fidgeting with the handkerchief, her eyes nervously checking the room as if to confirm they were alone. "Beth," Claire began in a barely audible whisper, then abruptly stopped when Peter's voice drifted in from the yard. Her expression shifted instantly from tentative resolve to fearful withdrawal as she hurried back toward the living room, leaving Beth alone with mounting suspicions. Beth wandered the house, her pace restless as she examined every possession of the twins, searching for any clue that might have been missed by the police, all while Detective Morris interviewed the neighbors and Peter remained outside with the K-9 unit. At length, unable to withstand the chaotic clutter any longer, she found herself in the kitchen washing dishes that had clearly been left untouched for days. Determined to keep her hands busy so as not to crumble under the weight of her anxiety, she continued her work until the sudden sound of a soft knock on the door startled her. Her heart raced as she cautiously approached the door, wondering who might be visiting at that late hour. A brief moment of hope perhaps that it might be Detective Morris with news about the twins. Peering through the small window, she gasped to see Claire standing there, as if having aged years in just a few hours. With disheveled white hair and a pale, drawn face, Claire glanced nervously over her shoulder at the dark woods behind her, clearly terrified of being followed. Beth quickly unlocked the door. "Claire, what are you doing here?" she asked. Without an immediate answer, Claire pushed past Beth into the camper, her entire body trembling as she surveyed the cramped space with furtive glances, checking for hidden listeners before finally turning to face her daughter-in-law. In a broken whisper, she confessed, "I couldn't stay silent any longer, not after what I found." With that, Claire revealed the most astonishing secret of all. "The girls, I think they're alive." Beth stared in astonishment. "Alive? And they're at the house?" Claire nodded, her voice barely audible as she explained that during that very morning, while Peter was in the shower, she had been dusting his study, a routine task on her visits. In doing so, she accidentally knocked a book from the shelf and discovered that the bookcase was attached to the wall in a peculiar way. With curiosity overcoming her caution, she had pushed against it and realized it could swing outward, revealing a hidden room behind it. Inside, she found the twins huddled together on a simple mattress, unharmed, with their toys, books, food, and all the missing items gathered around them. Emma recognized me immediately. "They call me Gamma, and they seemed confused but not frightened," Claire said softly. In that instant, relief and horror mingled in Beth's heart. Though the revelation that the twins were alive brought joy, the betrayal cut deep. Peter had staged their disappearance to stop Beth from taking custody during their bitter divorce. He had orchestrated everything, preferring that everyone believe the girls were dead rather than let Beth have them. As the shock of Claire's confession reverberated through the house, Peter's behavior grew even more erratic. Still reeling from the revelations and his own spiraling emotions, he had been drinking throughout the afternoon. His drinking escalated, from what looked like water, clearly vodka, to openly pouring whiskey. By the time the police began to gather evidence, Peter's paranoia reached its peak. In a small camper, he had made his temporary refuge at the lakeside campground. Peter confronted Beth in a scene that was both volatile and heart-wrenching. The camper, a modest 16 FD travel trailer with a small dinette that converted to a bed, a tiny kitchenette with a two-burner stove, and a cramped bathroom barely allowing movement, suddenly became the stage for a terrifying confrontation. In this confined space, decorated with a few family photos and personal mementos, Peter's accusations erupted. With bloodshot eyes and unsteady movements, he glared at Beth and accused her of abandoning their daughters, hurling bitter words about how, by leaving, she had doomed the family. His voice grew louder, and in a fit of anger, he produced a gun from his trembling hand and pointed it at Beth. "Did you tell her everything, Mother? About how I've been protecting my daughters from their unstable mother?" he shouted. The air inside the camper became thick with terror as Beth tried to reason with him. Her voice soft but firm in her plea that the girls, Emma and Lily, were safe and needed both of their parents. In that fraught moment, as Peter's hand shook on the weapon, Claire managed to discreetly slide her cell phone from her pocket and dial 911. Outside, the sound of approaching police sirens grew louder, piercing the charged silence with flashes of blue and red light through the camper windows. Peter's face twisted between anger and a momentary plea as he said, "Then come back. Come back to us, Beth. We could be a family again. I'll stop drinking. I'll get help, I promise." But even as Beth attempted to soothe him, Peter's paranoia flared once more. "You stopped being family when you walked out that door, when you abandoned us," he roared, raising his gun again as he accused her of a sinister plot to take everything from him. For a desperate heartbeat, the terror in the cramped space was palpable, each moment stretched by the rising sound of the police. Finally, as the inevitability of consequences dawned on him, Peter turned the gun away from Beth and pressed it against his own temple. "No!" cried Beth in a desperate lunge, and Claire screamed in alarm as they both reached out. In that harrowing moment, the camper door burst open, and two police officers rushed in, their voices firm as they ordered, "Drop the weapon now." Peter froze, the gun still pressed against his head, his eyes wild with panic. After a few agonizing moments that felt eternal, his shoulders slumped, the gun slipped from his fingers, and he mumbled softly, "My daughters, I just wanted to keep my daughters," as the officers quickly moved in to restrain him. Handcuffed and led away, Peter's face was a mixture of tears and hollow rage. The fury drained from him into a shadow of despair. Detective Morris appeared in the doorway with a grave expression as he asked, "Mrs. Harmon, are you all right?" Beth nodded though her heart was shattered, and she replied with urgency, "The girls, they're at the house, in a hidden room behind the bookcase in Peter's study." Detective Morris's eyebrows shot up, but without hesitation, he dispatched officers to the house with precise instructions concerning the secret space. Already reaching for her coat, Beth insisted that the girls would be frightened if kept any longer, and together with Detective Morris, they hurried to the house. As they arrived, the neglected home, now under harsh illumination from an officer's switched-on porch light that made the peeling paint and overgrown flower beds seem even more forlorn, beckoned for resolution. With trembling hands, Beth fumbled with her keys until Detective Morris gently took them from her and unlocked the door. Inside, the musty, stale air mixed with lingering notes of whiskey and unwashed dishes. The officers, working efficiently, switched on more lights and conducted a quick sweep of the main floor before moving steadily toward Peter's study. In that study, the room was exactly as Beth remembered it. Dark wood paneling, heavy curtains, and a large, cluttered desk bearing papers and empty glasses. Dominating one wall was a bookcase filled with leather-bound volumes that Peter had collected over the years, most of them unread but impressive nonetheless. "It's behind there," Claire said with a trembling finger as she recalled a mechanism, a latch or something similar that Peter had once shown her when the house was built. One of the officers inspected the bookcase carefully, trying to recall how to open it. Despite multiple attempts and suggestions that tools might be needed to force it open, Beth firmly declared, "My daughters are in there. We're not using crowbars or anything that might frighten them more." As she ran her hands along the shelves looking for anything unusual, her fingers traced a copy of The Secret Garden, a gift from her to Peter on their first anniversary, that appeared slightly pulled forward. Acting on instinct, she tugged at the book, and with a soft click, the entire right section of the bookcase swung outward by an inch or two. Behind the hidden door, light spilled into a small, secret room roughly 8 feet square and devoid of windows, revealing the twins. There, on a simple mattress surrounded by the missing toothbrushes, hairbrushes, and an assortment of toys, books, food, and other personal items, Emma and Lily sat huddled in matching pajamas with tangled brown hair and wide, confused eyes. When Emma timidly called out, "Mommy," Beth's heart surged with relief as the girls ran into her arms, crying and clinging to her. She knelt on the floor and gathered both of them, inhaling the familiar scent of baby shampoo and that unique, faint sweetness that was all theirs. Claire stood quietly in the doorway, her face a mixture of relief and grief as she watched the reunion, tears streaming down her lined cheeks at the sight of her granddaughter safe, but still visibly confused by the commotion. The hidden room itself, furnished with only a mattress, the twins' favorite blankets, a small lamp for dim light, a shelf holding books, toys, and snacks, a portable potty chair, and a stack of clean clothes, was clearly a space Peter had meticulously planned to keep them comfortable for what he had intended to be an extended period. Yet, that careful arrangement only deepened the chill in Beth's spine as she wondered how long Peter had intended to keep them hidden. As police officers documented every detail, photographing the hidden room and carefully bagging the missing items, little Emma asked in confusion, "Gamma, why are the police here?" Claire knelt beside the girls and gently explained, "Daddy said we were playing a special hiding game." Lily, with her lower lip trembling, added in a soft voice that their daddy had said Mommy was lost and that they had to hide until she found her way back. Anger welled up in Beth at Peter's cruel manipulation, yet she kept her voice calm for the sake of her daughters. "I was never lost, my loves. I was looking for you everywhere, and now I have found you. We're going to be together." Detective Morris then approached, his expression softening as he observed the reunion. "Mrs. Harmon, we'll need to take the girls to the hospital for a checkup, standard procedure in cases like this," he said. Beth nodded in understanding, despite her dread of another separation from her daughters, however brief. "Can I stay with them?" she asked. Morris reassured her that she could, adding that statements from everyone could wait until tomorrow. For now, the girls' health was the priority. In the moments that followed, as the family and officers prepared to leave for the hospital, Claire quietly confided in Beth. In whispered tones, she admitted that she had made the same mistake twice, first with Peter's father and then with Peter himself, choosing loyalty to a man over the safety of a child. "I couldn't let another generation of children grow up thinking that love means control and fear," Claire said, her voice growing stronger, even as tears streamed down her face. Beth, taking Claire's trembling hand, responded with resolute kindness. "You gave him what you could with what you knew then, and today you saved your granddaughters. That isn't failure, that's courage." As Beth gathered her precious daughters close, she knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, yet the unwavering resilience in Emma's and Lily's faces rekindled hope. The cycle of trauma and betrayal that had twisted Peter's life would, she vowed, end with him. Her twins would grow up to know what healthy, unconditional love looked like, a love that set you free rather than locked you away in secrets and fear. When the ambulance arrived and paramedics gently took the twins for a thorough checkup, Beth and Claire rode side by side in the waiting room, their minds heavy with regret and determination. Even as little Emma and Lily clutched hands on the gurney, their questions about why their daddy had made them hide in a wall remained unanswered for now. Beth comforted them softly, promising that they were safe and that soon all the painful secrets would be laid to rest. As the long night of terror finally gave way to the soft light of a new dawn, the shattered fragments of a family slowly began to mend. In that hidden room, once a dark symbol of Peter's deceptions and control, the promise of healing, unity, and a better future started to take root. The ordeal, with every betrayal, every moment of despair, had ultimately led to this fragile, hard-won reunion. It was a beginning, however uncertain, of a life where secrets no longer dictated fate and where love, true and unbridled, would guide them forward. If you found this intense, powerful, and poignant journey moving, please show your support by subscribing to our channel. Your subscription not only helps us continue to share stories of hope and redemption, but also ensures you never miss an update from our heartfelt community.